Hey guys, it has been forever since I did an episode of I Stand Alone. What that basically means is I find a single issue of a comic book, I read it without reading any of the backstory involved with that comic book, and I determine, does that comic book stand on its own? Or do you need all of the backstory that comes before to really understand what's going on? I've done this several times before. I try to alternate, go DC Marvel, Indie, DC Marvel, Indie. The last thing I did was Indie, so this video is for a DC comic book. Legion of Superheroes issue 212. This is actually back in the day when it was called Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. If you are unaware, that series, that title, I believe, Adventure Comics, featured Superboy on a regular basis, and then eventually it became Superboy and the Legion, and then slowly Superboy began to be faded out of the Legion until eventually around the 300s it was just the Legion of Superheroes, and then that title got canceled eventually, and then it became a new Legion of Superheroes series. That's unimportant. What's important here is that this is from 1975. Now, a lot of people consider the mid-70s to be the end of the Silver Age. That's right around the time when Jack Kirby began working on the New Gods. That's one of the signals of the end of the Silver Age. Gwen Stacy died around that time, and then Chris Claremont began working on the X-Men around this time. In my humble opinion, Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men is one of the greatest runs in comics ever. So this issue is happening literally around the same time when over at Marvel Comics, Chris Claremont is working on the X-Men. Now, even in the early days of Claremont's run on the X-Men, where things are a little bit goofy, where you've got people like the Animen and Count Nefaria, and it's like, oh, that's kind of silly, a little bit quaint. Even during the heyday of that being kind of the norm for comic books, Chris Claremont was really tearing it up on X-Men, really doing a fantastic job with character dynamics and with interpersonal relations between the characters, and slowly seeding a storyline that would begin here, and then it might be 5 issues before that storyline gets picked up again, and then by that time he's already been seeding another storyline that's going to be beginning in an issue or two. He was really fantastic at doing that, and he was starting that almost immediately after he began writing X-Men. So when I read something from around this time period, I've kind of spoiled myself because I've grown used to Chris Claremont, who, in my opinion, he's got some flaws, but he's a pretty fantastic writer overall. And Jim Shooter, he's the guy who wrote this. He's okay, especially, he's highly regarded on the Legion of Superheroes, but let's face it, he is no Chris Claremont. This book is, I feel like it's trying to be cool and modern and trying to be kind of anti-Silver Age. It still comes off incredibly dated, incredibly silly when you read it now. It starts off, you've got these 6 kids here, the ones here who are talking to Superboy. I don't know if you can read that. Basically what that chick is saying is, hey, we've defeated your fellow Legionnaires, so now you're going to let us into the team, Superboy. These guys, they all have powers of someone from the Legion of Superheroes. So, like, this girl here has got, I believe, telepathy or matter-eating powers. Because there's a kid in the Legion named Matter Eater Lad. You may not have known that. That's a little silly, but okay. So each of these guys over here has a power of someone from the Legion. And there's a rule in the Legion handbook that says you can only have a power that no one else has if you're to join the Legion. So, for example, if you have lightning powers and you want to go and join the Legion of Superheroes, you can't, because Lightning Lad already has lightning powers. Now, they even go so far as to point out, well, technically, Superboy, there he is, Superboy and Supergirl both have the same powers, but they're special. That's ridiculous. That is absurd. It's mind-boggling that the Legion members would hold everyone in the 30th century to this standard, and then they would say, but Superboy and Supergirl, they don't have to follow rules. They're above our laws. That's a little ridiculous. And speaking of ridiculous, the rule itself is kind of ridiculous. I just started wondering about this while I was reading this comic today. Why do they even have this rule? They're called the Legion of Superheroes, so you would think they could have 300 members in their ranks, and then they wouldn't have to worry about, oh no, Darkseid has risen, he's going to destroy the entire universe, and we've only got like 20 people if we pull everyone into active duty. What if they just lifted this dumb rule and then anyone with matter eater powers or anyone with lightning powers or anyone with magnetic powers or anyone with telepathy could then join the Legion, and then they could just station these people across the galaxy and they could probably take care of crime itself. Now, I understand from a writer's point of view why they're not going to do that, because if they get too many characters into the team, it's going to be hard to keep up with all these characters. It's going to be hard to keep up with which characters have a relationship with which characters have which personality traits, things like that. So they try to keep it to below 20 members. But in story, it really doesn't make any sense at all why they would have this kind of stupid rule, but have it they do. So anyway, these 6 guys on the cover of this comic, they all say, okay, we're going to challenge the Legion of Superheroes, and if we can defeat them, then we demand to be put on the team. Well, they did defeat the 6 members who have their same powers, and then Superboy comes in and he kind of throws those guys out, and then the Legion members are like, you're a jerk, Superboy. So then the next day they have a rematch, only this time the Legion of Superheroes, they use teamwork. They work together, and they defeat these kids, and they say, okay, now go home, you stupid kids. And then this guy comes from Matter Eater Lad's homeworld, and he says, you have been drafted. And Superboy says, what are you talking about? Your homeworld doesn't even have an army. And the guy's like, you're right. He didn't get drafted into the army. He got drafted to be a world politician, which that actually made me laugh out loud. They've got this service where you get drafted to be a senator or whatever, and they say, maybe one day you're going to be president. And apparently there was an issue way back in the day where I guess it was a flash forward where we got to see what all of the Legion members were doing in the far future, and Matter Eater Lad was the president of his home world. So this is kind of setting up that which was foreshadowed, sort of. So anyway, Matter Eater Lad, he leaves the team to go be a senator on his home world. And then he says, maybe you could have Calorie Lass join the team. Because I poo you not, the girl with the Matter Eater powers, her name was Calorie Lass. Yes, this is from the 1970s, but it still feels very much like it's from the 60s. Some of the things in this comic are extremely ridiculous, and I don't think they quite realized that when they were writing this comic book. So then we get a backstory where Shadow Lass sees Night Lass fighting some gangsters in Metropolis. Night Lass is a member of the Legion of Substitute Heroes, who in my personal opinion are awesome. And Night Lass, she's got the super strength powers, but only when it's nighttime. When it's daytime, she's powerless like a normal human. So then Shadow Lass comes in and she turns out the lights using her shadow powers, and I guess Night Lass then has powers, which I guess that means that if normal lights are on, she doesn't have powers. Like, it's kind of leads you to believe that it's the sun that takes away her powers, but in the first scene of this backup story, it's lights in a room that take away her powers. So, whatever, the gangsters escape, and then these two, they go after the gangsters. The gangsters are going after Cosmic Boy, who is Night Lass's boyfriend, and he apparently broke up with her earlier that day. And then the gangsters, they find Cosmic Boy. Night Lass comes in, risks her life to save Cosmic Boy. Cosmic Boy gets in a jealous rage. He nearly kills these guys. He doesn't really nearly kill them, but he gets pretty mad. And then he says, stay away from my girl, because this is 1975. And then she's like, oh, did you mean it? And he's like, yeah, now let's go on a picnic. It's pretty absurd, guys. It's like on a scale of 1 to absurd, it is very. Overall, I think that some of the ideas in this comic book could have worked okay. I think that with a more modern pacing, this could have been a really fantastic comic book. I think if they had led with the idea of, oh no, one of the Legion members is leaving the team forever, that could have been a little more interesting, because the fight with these 6 kids who were rejected from the Legion, that's kind of ridiculous, because the rule that Legionnaires can only have unique powers, that itself is kind of ridiculous in my humble opinion. The stuff with Matter Eater Lad leaving the team to go be a senator, while that itself is based on a pretty laughable premise, I actually like the idea of, oh no, he's leaving the team forever. And I know he doesn't leave the team forever because the Legion has been rebooted 4,000 times, and he has been back in some of the later reboot eras. But a lot of this still feels very mired in the Silver Age. Like, we have to get all of this issue done in one issue, and because of that, some of this feels a little ridiculous. We get Nightlass's origin story here. It feels extremely absurd, like it came right out of the 1950s, and in fact, it probably did. But here in the context of the mid-1970s, it still feels absurd. It doesn't feel any less ridiculous here than it would have when you were first reading her origin story back in the day. So, that's about what I have to say. Is this the best issue in the world? No, not really. Would it have been the best issue to read in 1975? Again, no, not really, because you could have been reading better comic books over at Marvel than what you have here. However, I am not here to review the quality of these comic books that I read for this specific kind of video. I'm here to say, does this comic book stand on its own? And I'm going to say, yes, it does. The 1970s, that was a period of time where you didn't have to worry about, oh no, what's going on? I don't understand because I haven't read the necessary back reading. You didn't have to have that problem back then. You could buy any comic book that you wanted and you knew what was going on. If you didn't know, they explained it to you. They explain who they're talking about. When they're talking about Cosmic Boy, if someone suddenly says his name, which is Rock, then there's a little caption that says, by the way, his name is Rock Kryn. So you don't have to worry about feeling lost here. And that's a quality that I miss from comic books today. I don't feel like we have nearly enough comic books that feel reader accessible, where you can just pick it up and read it, and you don't have to worry about reading 4,000 other comics from that same guy or from that same series to really understand what's going on. You don't have that problem here, and that is very admirable, even if this issue itself is not especially good. So that's all I have today. I hope that this video was very helpful for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video of I Stand Alone, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I will be back with you guys tomorrow with a different kind of video. Until then, I will see you guys later. Have a good day.